Hi all, this is Grandma. The last couple of days I've spent building this aquarium and it's so much more fun than knitting. And so we'll explore every aspect of it, but first let me show you the code running to build it. So to do that, I just go here and type run. Watch this. Wow, look at it go. Wow. Gee, an aquarium. An aquarium. Wow, that was an awful lot faster than building it block by block manually. And the beauty of having code to build it is that if I decided to make it a different color in the front or slightly change the shape of the fountain, or put different fish in the pools or in the inner aquarium, it would be just a line of code and I would run it again and I would have a whole new aquarium. Let's just watch it run one more time before we go inside and explore. Watch how fast fish is printing. And look, it's actually embedded in the wall, not just hanging out on the front. That wasn't easy. Okay, let's explore. So we're going to go down here to the ground and we will enter, and let's look over here. This is a pool where I have dolphins and they play in the waterfall, and sometimes they swim up the waterfall. And so the farthest I've seen them go up is maybe 3 or 4 blocks. They have jumped out of the waterfall and to the edge of the pool, like that one. But when I've been watching them, they've always gone back in. Now, of course, it's kind of fun to drop down in there with them and watch them play up close. But right now, we won't spend too much time at that because we want to go explore the other pool. This is the other pool. I have nice salmon in here. Now, an interesting thing about the salmon is, I don't know if it's an accident or not, but they frequently attract the slime that's wandering around. Oh, here comes some. So I've had as many as 3 slimes jump into the pool with them. And the dolphins, you know, they pay a lot of attention to them. I don't know quite what's going on, but dolphins and salmon and slime, they seem to get along pretty well. Okay, let's go back out here on the ground, and now look at this. Notice I have steps going up, multi-level structure, and there is the big aquarium that has all kinds of fish in it. And there's a little bit of kelp wandering around. And I have a bit of coral back there in the back. And notice there's that green stuff is the kelp. There's a glass interior which has no water in it. It's just air. It's kind of built as a platform. I thought I might one day put some plants in there, or maybe some different kind of fish in water. Actually, well, I won't go into all that. Okay, those are future things. Now let's go up and take a look. So we're in this big outer building, and inside where the aquarium is, notice it's the top of it. It has no top. The interior platform is topped with a non-glass top. And I've thought about building a bridge out so that you could stand on that and watch the fish, but haven't gotten around to it. Okay, so now if we go out here, and then we go up high again, we can watch. Now notice the design. So in order to understand the code, you need to understand the design. Okay, so if we look inside, notice everything is squares and they're concentric, meaning they have the same center. So there's kind of a platform, I call that the foundation. Then there's the glass aquarium, and then there's the center little structure that has air in it. There's a glass top, and in the front I call that a porch. There's a left and right pool, and the left pool has a fountain, which, you know, I'm really afraid those dolphins are going to jump out, but so far they've actually never jumped out. I could make that pool a little bit wider and move the fountain so that it's more a safer distance. At any rate, now notice, let's go over here and look at fish. I want you to notice that fish is actually embedded in the wall, the letters of fish. They're not sticking out on the front. See, they're embedded in the glass blocks. That was not easy to do, because what happens when you print something, it actually leaves air in the spaces that it doesn't use within the block where it prints the letter. So it's necessary to write a program to go in and replace all that air with whatever you want it to be. And in this case, I want it to be the same as the wall so that it would look embedded. Now also, if you've been coding MakeCode, you know how extremely slow the print command is. And another thing that's really slow is testing for air and replacing it with something. I've used that principle in several programs, and it's very, very, very slow to do very many of them. So I'm not a patient grandma. So what I'm doing is printing them in parallel. So let's watch it run again. And notice that each letter of the fish appears to be printing at the same time. And each of the blocks appear to be filling in with the glass blocks at the same time. Now, it's not literally at the same time, but apparently the way MakeCode works, it interleaves the commands so that it appears to be on time. I've also run some tests with other programs, and there's no apparent, time difference. I'm not going to go into all that because I have another blog coming up about it in the near future. Another thing, in order to speed this program up, I used one other type of parallel, unquote, code, which is the porch is being built the same time as the other structure. So let's watch that. Now watch for when the porch starts being built. See, it's built along with the big structure. And that's because the porch is actually fairly complex and it takes it a while to complete. So that speeded up the program a lot by having it by having it run at the same time. What does run at the same time mean? Well, I'm going to show you a little bit in the code, and but basically the idea is use chat commands to launch some parallel code. Okay, let's look a bit at the code. Oh my God, that's the code. Now, this is actually the most complex program that I've actually shared. I've had some other complex ones that I haven't published yet. And one problem I have is that when I have this much code, when I go into JavaScript, which I may need to do sometimes to figure something out, I can't go back to blocks because it says that the program is too big to go back to blocks. But apparently if I build it in blocks, it doesn't complain. So that's nice, but I can't go to JavaScript. Of course, I don't like going to JavaScript anyway, because when I come back, see this beautiful layout? If you go to JavaScript and try to come back to blocks, this layout is totally destroyed. Do you have any idea how long it takes to move all these things around so that they make sense? Okay, I'll stop railing about that, and I'm going to show you the code in a way that makes more sense. There are sections of the code, and we'll just take a glance at it, and then I'm going to show you something we need to understand before about the design. So this left part is the run a chat command and the initialization. So all these things have to do with setting up to build the buildings. And I'll explain on the design in a minute what that setup is. Then I build the outer building in this area. Then I build the tank and the fish inside. And this is where I'm populating the fish. Here I build the porch and the pools, and notice how much code this is just to build the porch and the pools. Pretty complex. And then all of this code is what it takes to print fish really fast. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And I'm planning a separate blog on post pretty soon on this. So I don't know how long we should go through it here. But let's go back and look at the design first. Okay, remember when we went up high here so that we could see? So what I start out with is imagining this thing. And so the first thing I do before it exists is I make a little drawing. It's not to scale, and it's just a sketch, but so this is the drawing I started with. This is the porch, which appears fairly obvious. So I decided on what these dimensions ought to be. Those are the two pools, and I decided on their dimensions. Notice also I have the porch corner. So every corner is defined as a make code position. Now, when you look at this, you view this as pointing east. And when I build in make code, I imagine it pointing east, which is the positive x coordinate, and this direction to the right is the positive z coordinate. That makes defining these squares really easy because all the coordinates are positive rather than having to deal with negative values. So I have the outer building, that's that one. I have what I call the mid, and the mid is there because of that little step, which is a half of a block. So that's I call that part of the foundation. Then there's the glass, which is the actual aquarium interior, the aquarium, and then there's an inner glass square, which I call the interior. So with that design, which pretty much looks like that, right? Okay, then the code makes a lot more sense. So let's look at the code in a little bit more detail. You know what I like about blocks? Grandma can read them an awful lot easier than she can JavaScript because Grandma's eyes are failing. Okay, happens when you get old. I hope you get there too. Okay, in the run command, first it says call move me and set the origin. You notice when I type run, the first thing it does is move me to a new place, and it positions me kind of in front of the building, and we go. Then I call this function define structure dimensions. And then I call a function define corners. Well, those two things do exactly what it says. So this is the dimensions, the square outer, the depth of the porch, the width of the porch, the squares of the slab. That's the bottom part of the foundation. The square of the mid, which is the second part of the foundation. Square of the glass, blah, blah, blah. So you can see all these different things have to have dimensions. Then the corners. So each corner is defined in terms of the corner that's outside it. So if I just change the very first dimension, then everything else is repositioned. I don't have to go in and change each one. So the corner of the porch is defined in terms of the origin, which was basically where the player started off before it was moved. The corner of the outer wall is defined in terms of the corner porch. And the corner porch is defined first because it's the westmost. Has the lowest x coordinate. So you kind of think of it really as it's basically near the origin. And then the corner of the outer building is up positive from that, and it's the depth of the porch from that. So that makes sense. The corner of the slab from outer is this far from outer, and it just goes on like that. Each one you have to really think through, and but it's simple by defining the corners, okay? So once you get all that stuff defined, then you just got one heck of a lot of fill commands. And this is where I do the outer building. Let's see, let's go back here and just tell you one thing. You know, this is the outer building, but I launched the porch code. So when I say run chat command porch, that actually starts and runs at the same time as doing the outer building. And that's because it's not a function. If I did it as a function, it would wait until the function finished and before it called the next function. So it launches porch. Now, if you're going to do this, let me just give you some warnings. They should not have any variables, changing variables in common, because the order in which the two codes get interleaved is unpredictable. So if you're going to share any variables, they should be read-only. Okay, enough of that lecture. So I build the outer building, and then I launch the print fish. Same thing holds for print fish. Don't have any variables in common unless they're read-only. Well, so I do the outer building. Look at all these fill commands. Fill, 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 fill. Now notice this fill is hollow. And I use hollows in order to build the four walls. And then like here, I wipe out the roof. I put the roof on with glass, which wipes out the top of this. I've forgotten what that block is called. Quartz. Wipes out the top layer of the quartz that was built using the hollow. So, and then I also may wipe out the bottom on some of them. So by using the hollow command, I save a lot of fills in order to build walls and so on. Even all that logic of building walls, I don't have to deal with. Now, fill command, I've used 25 fill commands in all this code. That's a lot, but it would have taken a lot more had I used some other approach to building walls. So I build the outer building, which has some, you have to cut the doors in it. So the way I do that generally is once I use a fill to build the walls, I then use air in certain positions to cut, I call it cutting the doors. Now this is a little trick I've started using. I know we have this wonderful thing, you know, add a comment. Well, the trouble is it really messes up your code unless you close them. Well, what's the point of that? Well, if you go over to JavaScript, you can read it, but here by using a variable called comment that I set to something, then I can write as much stuff in here as I want to, and that's a comment that I can actually read in the block code. I know you want to know all that. Then the next thing, remember we did the foundation? Well, that's the foundation. That's all it took. And the secret to having such small code, you know, there's two layers which are stepped, is by defining all those corners. It goes fairly easily. Now, after we do the foundation, then we build the tank. That's the fun part. So this is the tank. We put some glass in it, then we fill it. When I use hollow there again, and then I replace with water, and that replaces the bottom part of the glass, so that you're actually, the water is setting on the quartz. Notice that it was white inside. Let's see. Well, you can't see that from here. Am I going to butt my head? Nope. Okay, see, the bottom of the aquarium is white. I thought the fish actually display nicely against that, so that's why I did that. Then notice there's a function called do the tank inner glass structure. So that's that inside thing, which is kind of takes some stuff because I put the quartz roof on it. So, and notice I had put water in the big aquarium, so I actually had to replace that water here with air in order to get rid of the water inside the inner glass. I might try leaving that in there, as I said before, and put some special fish in there, but oh well. Okay, then after I've built it, I can do the aqua things. Let's see. I think that's called over. See, do the aqua things. That's the last thing I do here. So the aqua things are just the things that live in the water. So you've seen this a lot before. I use a bunch of spawns, and I don't want as many squid as I have other things, so I put a separate loop. Squids are so big, they get in the way of seeing everything else. Right now I'm playing with 20 other things, and of course to add more is really easy. And I have every kind of fish that there is in MakeCode at this point. I also put a little coral in to kind of line the inner glass structure, and I put some kelp in there just to see what it does. It doesn't do much, seems to just float around doing nothing. Okay, now the porch which we launched, see this? I have a chat command porch which got launched, and it wraps or calls the function do porch. By doing that, it runs at the same time as we've discussed before. The porch is a little bit complicated, but first I do the floor, then I do the left wall, then I do the left porch bench. Did you notice there was a bench? Okay, let's get out of here. Back. Because you might want to sit on this bench and watch the dolphins. Well, of course I would. Okay. There's also a bench on the other side where you can watch the salmon. So there's a left porch, there's a right porch wall, and the right porch bench, and the porch front. And the porch front is a little bit nice. Little decor there. Whoops. And then after I've built the front, I just built a solid front, and then I call the porch entry. So the porch entry means I cut out the solid color blocks, and I put the glass, and then I put blah blah blah, some air in the middle. Okay. Then the next thing, we're looking at the the pools. So then we start doing the pools, and I wrote one routine that, where is the one pool? There it is. This is this builds one pool. And notice it, here I'm calling it the fountain, but it is the corner of the pool. And I probably ought to change that, the name of that. Okay, so I define this corner before this function is called, and then it just goes and builds the pool. And this is an option, whether or not it has a fountain, and if the fountain height is set to 0, it doesn't actually build a fountain. So the right pool doesn't have a fountain. Then in the routine that does 2 pools, I set the corner fountain position. I set the depth of the fountain, which means, that doesn't mean the depth, it means how far into the porch it is. And then I set the height of the fountain. And here the height of the fountain is actually 8, and that is the tall fountain on the left. Then I do one pool, then I put 10 dolphins in it, and then I change the other corner and set the height of the fountain to 0, which means it won't do one, and then I call the function do pool again, and then I put 25 salmon in it. That's fun. Okay, the last thing we have to talk about is this crazy print command. And we won't spend much time on it, but I'm going to just give you the idea. So now, yes, you could use one little print command, and then you'd have to worry about filling in, of course. But it does take forever to print even just the 4-letter things. Well, not forever, but more patience than I have. So first you set the print position, then we're going to text as fish. We're going to use this blue block. We're going to set the print spacing between the letters as 6. That's the normal one. Then we're going to, we have 3 arrays here. Print position, or list really. Print I, print J, and we set them to empty. Then we have a very interesting loop. From 1 to the length of the text minus 1, which you know why that's required, I'm sure. And in that, we set the print position to the initial print position, then plus to the right, the print index, which means which letter it is, times the print spacing. So that each letter, as you go through the loop, it moves over one place to the right, which is what you want. We set the print I, we add a value, which is the print I position in the list for it to use as its variable. Same with J. You see that in a minute. And then we run the chat command print _ print index. So there's a print 0, 1, print 1, print 2, print 3. And we have a argument for the chat command, which is the print index. Now, let's look at one of the print functions. And one of the print chat commands. And there are 4 of them, 0, 1, and 3, and this one is 2. They are identical, except for the name. Now, by making them chat commands, that means they run at the same time, which means as you watch fish being printed, notice they were all running at the same time. And so the print command is here. It prints, this is the argument, print _ num1. It prints from the substring of text, the 1 character, which the num is. So it first gets F. Print 2 would be 0, 1, 2, FIS, so this would be S. It uses the block, the blue block, and the position is in the array, print position at the index number. And then, of course, we print towards the south. Now we have a loop, and we're looping on print I, and we're looping inside that on print J. What this is doing, it is filling in the error that was left by the print command. So 6 is the number of rows in the letter, and 5 is the number of columns. It tests for error at the position relative to the print command. A little complicated. If there is error, it fills it in with a brick. That all causes it to be embedded. You will notice in these routines there are no variables that are used by the other print routines, and that's required because if they run at the same time, they cannot use the same variables. So that's why I'm using an array to hold the values for the various versions of print. Now, the one thing that does seem to work, and I can't say that I completely understand why, but print _ num1 is apparently local. Now, it's passed into each print routine, and it's different for each one. It's 0 for print _ 0, it's 1 for print _ 1, and so on. And that does work. I'm a little troubled that when I go into JavaScript, it doesn't look like a local variable, but I'm going to explore that another time. Okay, that is how print works. So let's go back and we're going to watch that print one more time because I just love watching how fast it is. I don't have time right now to show you how slow it is if I'm not doing it in parallel, but it is slow. Like it still wouldn't be finished, and it still wouldn't be finished, and it still wouldn't be finished. And we could sit here and maybe go get coffee and it might be finished. It really takes a long time to both print fish, then go back and fill in each of the blocks. I know you just can't resist seeing it one more time. Now, when you run this code, I know that you're going to want to sit. I like to leave this running a long time because every time I've left it running for a few hours, I always get slime in with my salmon. So far, I haven't gotten any slime in with the dolphins, so not completely clear about that. I have experimented with putting some ocelots around, wondering if they would eat some of the dolphins. I mean, some of the, some of the salmon, because ocelots eat fish, but they just wandered off and didn't pay any attention. Thank you for watching. This is Grandma out.